There's a moment when your entire world, your understanding of family, shatters into a million pieces. For me, it happened on my father's birthday, and it revealed a truth so brutal, it changed my life forever. Hey everyone, it's Cass. I'm 32, and honestly, I've done pretty well for myself. Not like yacht and private jet well, but I'm comfortable. I love my career, I travel when I want, and my bills don't keep me up at night. The big thing though? I built this life entirely on my own. No silver spoon, no connections, just years of pure grind. And you know what? That's something my family absolutely cannot stand. See, I grew up in a household where success was different. It was about how much you could take from others, and then how loudly you could complain when there was nothing left. My parents, Lisa and Mark, were masters of this art. My older brother, Nathan, and my younger sister, Rachel, fell right into line. They were a tight unit, always watching each other's backs, but not in a loving way. More like a pack of wolves, always looking for the weakest link to sink their teeth into. I was the anomaly. Maybe it was being the middle child, or maybe I just figured out early on that relying on them meant setting myself up for pure disappointment. Whatever the reason, I bolted the second I could. I worked my tail off, got scholarships, juggled side jobs, and built a life that had absolutely nothing to do with them. That should have been the end of it, right? But family ties, even toxic ones, are messy. No matter how much distance I tried to put between us, they always found a way to reel me back in. Not with kindness, not with apologies, but with guilt. We're struggling, Cass. You're doing so well. Isn't it your duty to help? And like a fool I did. It started small, a few $100 here, covering a late bill there. Then came the loans that were never repaid, the never-ending emergencies that only seemed to hit them. And then the house. 2 years ago, I bought this beautiful 3-bedroom house as an investment property. It was in a great neighborhood, the kind of place I'd always dreamed of growing up in. It was meant to be a rental, some passive income for my future. But my parents, of course, had other ideas. The second they found out I owned it, the manipulation began. My mom called, sobbing. Their landlord had raised the rent again. They couldn't afford it. They were going to end up on the streets. My dad, always the practical one, didn't cry. He just sighed, a heavy, disappointed sound, and told me how sad it was that his own daughter would rather rent to strangers than help her family. Nathan and Rachel chimed in, making me feel like a monster for even hesitating. You have everything, Cass, Rachel sneered. Why can't you just do this one thing for them? So I caved. I told myself it was temporary. They get back on their feet, move out in a few months. But months turned into a year, then 2. And in all that time, they never paid a single cent. Not for rent, not for utilities, not even for basic maintenance. I covered everything. And if I ever dared to bring it up, I was the unreasonable one. They're your parents, Cass. Nathan had scoffed, shaking his head like I was some ungrateful child. You wouldn't even have this house if they hadn't raised you. Rachel was even worse. What's a few thousand to you? You make more in a month than most people do in a year. In their minds, my success wasn't mine. It was theirs, something they were absolutely entitled to. Which brings me to tonight. It was my father's birthday, and my mother, ever the orchestrator, insisted on a big family dinner at the house. The house I paid for, of course. I had zero intention of going. I'd given up trying to be part of their little twisted club years ago. But then Mom called, her voice syrupy sweet, telling me how much it would mean to them if I just showed up. How it had been so long since we'd all been together. I should have hung up. I should have ignored the call and carried on with my perfectly good life. But there's still this tiny, foolish part of me, buried deep down, that wants to believe they're capable of being different. That maybe, just maybe, they could treat me like a daughter instead of a walking ATM. So I went. I parked down the street, taking a moment to just breathe and brace myself before walking up the driveway. The lights inside were blazing, shadows dancing behind the curtains. Laughter spilled out through a slightly open window, loud and distorted. I paused, my hand on the doorknob, right as my name was spoken. She actually came? Rachel's voice, dripping with amusement, cut through the night. I thought she was too busy hoarding her precious money to spend time with her family. Nathan laughed. Maybe she's finally learned to be generous. Doubt it. You know how she is. Ungrateful, my mother sighed, a heavy, dramatic sound. After everything we did for her. My father scoffed. No husband, no kids. All that money and nothing to show for it. She thinks she's better than us, but in the end, she's going to die alone. Rachel hummed in agreement. She should be grateful she even gets to help us. Not like she'd have anywhere else to belong. I slowly let go of the doorknob. There was no anger. No immediate rush of sadness. Just this cold, quiet realization settling over me. They will never change. They don't love me. They never did. To them, I'm not family. I'm a resource. A bank account they can draw from whenever they want, with absolutely no regard for the person behind it. I stepped back from the door, turned around, and started walking away. My heels clicked softly against the pavement, the only sound breaking the sudden, eerie quiet in my head. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my fingers surprisingly steady, and dialed a number. A voice picked up on the second ring. Cassandra, what's up? I took a deep breath, the night air crisp against my skin. I'm ready, I said. Start the eviction process. Silence. Then a low whistle. Finally had enough, huh? I glanced back at the house one last time, the warm, inviting glow of the lights now feeling like a trap. Yeah, I murmured. I think I have. I hung up, slipping the phone back into my pocket. The weight of what I'd just set in motion hit me then, but not in the way I expected. My heart didn't race. There was no adrenaline, no wild triumph. It was more like a quiet, profound relief. Like the moment you finally let go of something impossibly heavy after carrying it for far, far too long. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally doing something for me. Something that had been a very long time coming. I stood there for another minute, just breathing in the cool air, grounding myself. Then I turned and headed back to the family gathering. As I approached the door again, their laughter floated out, the words still echoing in my mind. Rachel's mocking tone, Nathan's dismissive chuckle, my parents' disappointed sighs. I took another deep breath, forced a calm expression, and stepped inside. The dining room was decked out, full-on celebration mode, balloons, banners, a cake I knew my mother hadn't baked herself. The moment I walked in, the conversation died. All eyes snapped to me. My family, for all their flaws, knew how to make an entrance feel like an event. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, though, it was almost like they were waiting for something, a dramatic pause before the performance. Cass, you made it. My mother's voice was syrupy sweet, almost sickeningly so, like she was trying just a little too hard to play the doting mother. I forced a polite smile and a nod, pretending her backhanded compliments and veiled criticisms didn't bother me. Come in, dear. Take a seat. We've been waiting for you. I slid into a chair at the end of the table, the seat that had always been mine since I was a kid. They'd never made room for anyone else there. No boyfriends, no partners, no friends. Just me. I could feel their eyes on me, but I kept my focus straight ahead, pretending to admire the centerpieces. Rachel shot me a quick glance, her lips curling into a barely concealed sneer. It had always been like this with her, like she was bitter I'd managed to carve out a life without relying on anyone. My father grunted from the other end of the table, fiddling with his fork, eyeing me like I was some kind of puzzle he hadn't quite figured out. So, Cass, he said, his voice low and careful, how's the business going? Still raking in all that cash? His tone was pure passive aggression, the kind of jab that's supposed to sound innocent but is anything but. I didn't take the bait. "It's going well," I said, keeping my voice neutral. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of knowing how well it was going. "Busy but good." "Good, good," my mother said quickly, too quickly. "Glad to hear it. We've been wondering, though, how much longer we can stay in this place. We don't want to overstay our welcome." The words hung in the air for a moment, and I couldn't help but laugh inside. They really thought I was that naive? That I hadn't noticed the way they'd been manipulating me for the past 2 years? The guilt trips, the faux concern, the constant reminders of how hard they'd worked for me, all of it designed to make me feel like I owed them something. Nathan, always the one to push things a little further, leaned back in his chair with a smirk. "Yeah, I mean, Cass, you're doing so well for yourself. I don't think it'd be too much of a stretch for you to, help us out more. We've been living here for a while now." I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my composure. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need to," I replied, my voice as calm as I could manage. "But I think we both know this situation can't go on forever." Rachel piped up, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Yeah, right. If you ever decide to actually help us. But I guess it's hard when you're too busy spending your money on yourself, huh?" I forced a smile, but I could see her smirk faltering as I leaned forward slightly, my eyes meeting hers. "Rachel, you've never been shy about telling me what you think I should do with my life. But just so you know, I don't need to justify my success to you or anyone else." The words were sharp, cutting through the tension in the room, but I didn't care. I'd let them push me around for far too long. My mother shifted in her seat, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. "Of course not, dear," she said, but there was a thinly veiled bitterness in her tone. "We just want what's best for you, that's all." I glanced around the table, and for the first time, I didn't feel the pull of guilt or obligation. I didn't feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I knew deep down that what I was about to do was the right thing, even if they'd never see it that way. I nodded slowly, my gaze hardening. "Well, I've made some decisions. And I think it's time we have a conversation about the future," I said, my voice steady, but with a firmness that made everyone in the room sit up a little straighter. I didn't need to say it aloud. They all knew what I meant. I was done being the one they could lean on without ever giving anything back. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. The silence stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. My father was the first to break it, his voice low and edged with something like impatience. "What's that supposed to mean, Cass?" he asked, his brow furrowed. "You don't think we've done enough for you over the years?" I let out a slow breath, my mind flashing back to all the times I'd been the one to help, the one to bail them out, the one to fix things when they couldn't be bothered to try. "No, I don't," I answered softly, but the words hit harder than I expected. "And I think it's time you all start to figure things out on your own." The room went still. There was no arguing, no immediate outburst, just a tense, unnerving silence. I could feel my mother's eyes on me, but I didn't flinch. I'd made my decision. Now it was time to let them stew on it. As the night dragged on, the conversation shifted, but the tension remained. I could tell they were all trying to act normal, but it was like they were walking on eggshells around me. I didn't care. I was done playing along. By the time I left, nothing had been resolved at the table, but I knew something crucial had changed. I'd set things in motion, and when I got home, I made that call again, just to confirm. This time, I wasn't backing down. And they didn't even know what was coming for them. The following morning, I woke up to a quiet sense of satisfaction, a feeling that lingered in the air. It wasn't the rush of winning a fight, but the deeper calm that comes from finally putting yourself first after years of giving everything to everyone else. I'd made the call last night, and today, it was all going to come to a head. I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping coffee, when my phone rang. It was my lawyer. I glanced at the screen and answered with a steady voice, even though I could feel the nerves bubbling beneath the surface. "Cass," the lawyer greeted me, his tone crisp. "It's all set. We're ready to send them the notice." My heart skipped a beat. I took a deep breath. "Perfect. Let's do it." I could already picture it, the shock on my parents' faces when they got the official notice that they had to vacate the house. The house I bought, where they lived under the pretense that it was just temporary. They didn't know I'd already made arrangements to have them removed if they didn't comply. After everything, it was time for them to face the reality of their actions. They'd taken advantage of my kindness long enough. As the hours ticked by, I tried to stay calm. I wasn't nervous, I was just ready. I didn't need to justify myself anymore. I didn't need their approval or their guilt trips. This was my decision, and I wasn't backing down. I could almost hear the arguments already. "How could you do this to us? How could you kick us out after everything we've done for you?" But I knew the truth. They'd never truly done anything for me. It had always been about what they could take, never about what they could give. And this was me, finally drawing a line in the sand. The text came through at exactly 11:30 a.m. Official, professional, and final. The eviction notice had been sent. In less than 30 days, my parents and siblings would be out of the house. I stood there for a second, staring at the phone, and let out a slow exhale. A wave of profound relief washed over me. They wouldn't understand it now, but they would eventually. They had no idea how much this moment had taken out of me. And then, at that exact moment, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Rachel. A single sentence, "Why would you do this?" I stared at it for a long moment, almost laughing to myself. The sheer audacity of it. It was just like Rachel to flip the script, to make me the villain in this whole situation, to act like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I didn't respond right away. It was better to let her stew for a while. I'd deal with it when the time was right. That evening, I drove over to their house to talk. The tension was thick the moment I stepped inside, and it wasn't just because of the notice I'd sent earlier. No, there was something else simmering beneath the surface. My mother's eyes were cold when they landed on me, and my father's hands were clenched tightly around his drink. Rachel and Nathan were already seated at the table, their faces like open books, exposed, angry, and confused all at once. They knew something was different, they just didn't know what. I made my way to the table, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like the one in control. No more walking on eggshells, no more pretending to be something I wasn't just to keep the peace. This was my turn. "Cass, we need to talk about this," my father said, his voice tight. "You can't just throw us out like this. We've been here for 2 years and you owe us." I didn't flinch. "Actually, I don't owe you anything. I've done more than enough. But I can't keep doing it anymore." My mother's voice rose slightly, desperate. "How can you do this to your own family? After everything we've done for you? This is how you repay us." Rachel's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a sneer. "It's typical of you, Cass. Always thinking you're better than the rest of us. You think you can just pull this kind of thing without any consequence." I turned to face her, my voice steady but filled with a quiet certainty. "I'm not the one who's been using my family's kindness for my own advantage. You're right, maybe I am better than you. I don't need to hide behind guilt or manipulation. I can stand on my own." Rachel's face flushed, but before she could snap back, my father interrupted, his voice hardening. "You think this is about you being better than us? It's about respect. It's about family. You think we don't deserve a roof over our heads after everything we've done for you? We gave you everything, Cass. We sacrificed for you, and look where we are now." I shot back, my own frustration bubbling to the surface. "You've been living in my house for 2 years without paying rent, taking advantage of me at every turn. You're not the ones who made sacrifices. You didn't give me anything that was worth anything. I did this all on my own." "Enough," my mother snapped, her voice rising in a rare display of genuine anger. "I can't believe you'd turn your back on us like this. You're disrespecting your family." I shook my head slowly, the disappointment in their eyes not fazing me anymore. "No. You disrespected me a long time ago. I'm done being your safety net, your charity case, your punching bag. You don't get to guilt trip me into submission anymore." The table went silent. For a moment, no one knew what to say. The usual cycle of guilt tripping, manipulation, and self-righteous anger seemed to have hit a wall. No one knew how to react when I stopped playing along. Rachel's lips trembled with anger, and she stood abruptly, knocking over her chair. "I can't even look at you right now," her voice cold and cutting. "You're awful." My father stood up too, his voice low and seething with a barely controlled rage. "You don't get to treat us like this. You'll regret this, Cass. You'll regret everything." "I won't," I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. "Because it's done. The house is mine, and you'll have to figure things out without me." I felt the weight of the words settle between us, and I knew that this moment, this conversation, would change everything. But there was no going back now. I'd crossed a line, and it was too late for them to fix it. I turned to walk out, but not before I heard my father's voice one last time. "You'll be sorry, Cass. You'll see." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because I knew, deep down, they'd never see things the way I did. And they'd never understand why I did what I did. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a strange sense of finality. There was no going back from this, and they didn't even realize that I just set everything in motion. The following weeks felt surreal. Every time I walked into my own house, I couldn't help but notice the weight that had lifted from my shoulders. There were no more angry, guilt-ridden texts, no more unexpected visits from my parents, no more passive-aggressive remarks from Rachel. It felt like a lifetime of tension had finally unraveled, and for the first time in years, I had room to breathe. But of course, that wasn't the end of it. I knew it wouldn't be. The eviction notice had been crystal clear, and the clock was ticking down. My parents had tried to delay it. They'd attempted to appeal, sending me pleading messages about how hard things were for them. It was the same old song and dance, but I had already made up my mind. My decision was final, and nothing they said could change that. I hadn't heard from them for a while, not until the very day the movers arrived. I was at work when I got the text. My mother, ever the victim, had sent it with a simple line, "You're heartless." My first instinct was to respond with something equally cutting, but I stopped myself. There was no need. I had already done what was necessary. They had to face the consequences of their actions. The movers arrived that afternoon. My parents weren't home, which, frankly, was better for everyone. I didn't have to deal with their angry words or guilt-laden attempts to manipulate me one last time. I had given them more than enough chances. Now they would face the reality of what they had done. By the time I got back home that evening, the house was quiet. It was empty. The only thing that remained was the hollow space left behind by the people who had once filled it. There were no more arguments, no more demands. I walked through the rooms that had been occupied by them for so long. It was almost like a weight had been lifted from the very walls themselves. The silence was deafening, but it felt good. I checked my phone. There was another message, this time from Rachel. "I can't believe you kicked us out like this. You don't even care about family. You think you're so much better than us." I didn't even bother responding. The next few days were strange. My phone buzzed with family members trying to get in touch, messages from cousins, distant relatives, even some of my friends who had heard rumors. Some of them tried to play mediator, asking if I could just forgive them or telling me how harsh I was being. They didn't understand, and I couldn't bring myself to explain. What was there to explain anyway? I had been carrying them for years, allowing them to manipulate and guilt-trip me into doing everything for them. But no one had ever truly been there for me. No one had ever asked what I needed or how I felt. It was always about what I could give. My parents didn't respect me. They never had. They were angry now, but that would eventually fade. They'd be fine. And if they weren't, that wasn't my problem anymore. A week after the eviction, I finally heard from my father. He didn't ask how I was doing or check on me. Instead, it was a long, angry rant about how I had destroyed the family and that I would eventually come crawling back, realizing my mistake. I read the message, then deleted it. The next family gathering was awkward, to say the least. My parents and siblings were nowhere to be seen. I hadn't expected them to show up, not after everything that had gone down. But I couldn't help but feel that cold pang of disappointment when I realized they weren't there either. It was probably for the best. I wasn't about to beg them for forgiveness. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into that toxic cycle of guilt, manipulation, and ungratefulness. It was over. As the days passed, I noticed a subtle shift in the way I approached life. I stopped feeling guilty for prioritizing my needs over theirs. I started making decisions for myself without worrying about their reactions. I didn't need to explain myself to anyone anymore. But the hardest part was the quiet. I hadn't realized how much noise they had filled my life with until they were gone. There was no one to judge my every move, no one to make me feel bad for my success. It felt like a weight had been lifted, not just from my shoulders, but from my heart. I've thought about reaching out, trying to mend things. But every time I'm tempted, I remind myself why I did it. It's not about revenge or getting back at them. It's about taking control of my life. It's about finally standing up for myself after years of putting everyone else first. In the end, I realized something important. They may be my family, but family doesn't give you the right to treat someone like an option, to take advantage of their generosity without ever offering anything in return. Family should be about respect, love, and mutual support. I had done everything I could to be there for them, but I was never going to be their doormat again. So, for now, I'm at peace with my decision. It's not easy, and it's not something I take lightly. But it's the right choice for me. Now, I want to hear your thoughts. Am I wrong for doing this? Should I have tried harder to make things work with my family, or was this the only way? Let me know what you think.